We stay in Berlin. I handle over to Inken Schmütz from another department, from the Senate Department of Urban Development, Building and Housing, directly involved in the EdiCitNet project. And yeah, so Inken, it's your first, or? You will do it together with Robert Shaw from the Prinzessinnengärten, already mentioned. Both were running the living labs in Berlin, and now we will have some insights from another department, from the city administration, and from a very important social entrepreneur in urban food in Berlin.
Nicht genug Platz für beide, ne?
Ich halte es einfach in der Hand.
Okay. Ich auch.
Okay. Hello and a warm welcome to everyone here in Berlin. I'm Inken Schmütz. I work for the Senate Department for Urban Development, Building and Housing here. And in this EdiCitNet context, I was the so-called called city coordinator, and I've been with the project almost the whole time. I think the fact that we are meeting here in Berlin is also the reason why we are first with our story, so let's don't waste any time and get started.
Okay. Yeah. You start.
Before we get to the story, a little bit of background information. As I'm sure you all know, Berlin is the only EdiCitNet city with both roles, like we are a frontrunner city and we are a follower city. And consequently, there are many actors involved, or I would call them today here story makers. Here on the top left, you can see us, the Senate Department for Urban Development, Building and Housing. We were mainly responsible for the whole master plan process, and we had our partner, the Stadtkümmerei, at our side to support us. But the heart of the master plan process was, of course, our city team. But we couldn't do all the work on our own. So for the living labs, we have our most amazing partner, Prinzessinnengärten.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Robert Shaw, and I'm co-founder of Prinzessinnengärten. We're a community garden existing since about 15 years in Berlin. We came onto the project, so a year after, because the living lab, I think Heidelberg stepped out and we came in. And so, we started to find it quite complicated to understand the structures, so we engaged Stadtbau. Sorry, I got something in my throat. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. So we engaged Stadtbau to help us with the formal structures. The first thing we did, we wanted to split the living lab into two places. One is Hellersdorf, it's a quite outside edge, city edge place, and secondly, one in Neukölln, a quite city center place. I'm sorry, I think I'm smoking too much probably. Our thinking was that both together represent the whole city much better than just one of them. So we organized city teams and started up two city teams, and one for Hellersdorf, one for Neukölln. Organized 6 meetings within which the city teams were allowed to tell us what we're going to do for the following 4 years.
The grant agreement already made it clear that ECS can achieve a lot. We in Berlin have placed the focus on the social aspects. Especially in socially disadvantaged neighborhoods, intelligent solutions are needed to ensure equal living conditions throughout the whole city. ECS can play to the full strength here, bringing together people, nature, and the city in a social way. So this was, in a way, our headline for the story. But what are the physical outcomes here in Berlin after 5 years of EdiCitNet? We have managed to complete a master plan together with the city team in a long, not always easy, but insightful process. In addition to the master plan, a practical guidebook was developed and will be implemented and used in the context of the funding program Social Cohesion to facilitate the implementation of ECS. But because we are a front-runner city as well, we luckily just don't have papers and documents as a result.
Yeah, and we were mainly running the Living Lab, as you saw here, and the city teams they co-created what we had to work on for 4.5 years. It was a bit of a scary situation for us because we never had that beforehand. And they gave us 6 tasks to work on, the so-called edible city solutions. And I'm just going to go through them quickly because we don't have so much time. First of all, in Hellersdorf, as I said, it's a small, rather small, 900 square meters community garden at the edge of Berlin, existing since about 2015. And there, the garden had to move. And the first task was to re-establish the garden in terms of social connections to the neighborhood and as well infrastructure. We went beyond infrastructure in that project because we rebuilt the garden and had a lovely water treatment plant together with Erwin Nolde. He's here somewhere as well. Designed for allotment gardens, there he is. But that was the first ECS we were working on. The second is the garden itself is just next, one of the biggest building sites of a social housing company owned by the city of Berlin, the Gesobau. They're building 1,500 flats over there. And through Edible CityNet as well, we were able to go into cooperation with them and did some edible landscaping concept, which is still not practically happened because it's still they're still in the building phase. It took longer than they thought. But for us, it was quite amazing to be part of such thing. It's going to be about 45 fruit trees, 600 meters of edible hedge, and 7,500 square meters of a herb garden in cooperation with a social housing company, which are going to happen there, and we're supposed to take care of them together with the neighborhood. And the third one was a shared... I'm taking too much time? No. Sorry. And the third one was a shared task between Hellersdorf and Neukölln, which was trying to produce products and monitor if they ecologically work out of the garden. We didn't want to do that one in the beginning. It was a city team thing. Now, they still don't really economically work, but they're beautiful. But you will see them later on. Then in Neukölln, we had a different city team. The garden there, as you will see tomorrow, is on the former cemetery. 75,000 square meters are quite big. And there as well, we were supposed to address the neighborhood through a series of events, which we did during the past 3.5 years. Then we were trying to find out the reason that we can be on the cemetery is that mourning culture is changing a lot in Germany and I think in whole of Europe. And these cemeteries have a huge potential in space, just in the city, in green space, which mostly you can't build on them, so the space cannot really be monitorized. And we wanted to find out if if we could be part, or gardening could be part, or growing food of a new mourning culture. Found that an interesting question, so we've been working on that quite for the last years as well. It wasn't easy. A lot of data protection issues and stuff like that. And then because the cemetery is in transition, especially the one we're on, it's going to be closed in about 25 years. And we have the opportunity there to, by funding, build mainly maybe an environmental education center. We were renting out a little room to kind of co-create the program and the concept of that environmental education center together with the neighborhood. And that's what we're working on still at the moment. Sorry, that was long.
So that was the background information, and as you can imagine, it is hardly possible to pack these two big processes of 3 to 5 years each into a story of 15 minutes. So here are a few of our most important learnings that the master plan process and the living labs have in common. First, the EdiCitNet story in Berlin is a colorful story about working together with people who would have never come together like this without EdiCitNet.
Yeah, that's very true. I was amazed. First of all, right in the beginning, we were quite afraid to work in that top-down, bottom-up relation on eye level, basically, in terms of the living labs. We were going like, would that really work? And I was amazed, and I gained a lot of understanding for how like an institution like the Senate works, which helps me in understanding the processes in the city now better. Doesn't mean there's nothing to criticize from the point of view of an initiative, but the understanding is of huge value for me. And as well, it was interesting that construction of city team was quite interesting for us as well, because it brought together people from like the administration as well as a neighbor, and they both had the same vote on what we're going to do. And the project itself, the framing, European project, big project, was like a massive door opener for people willing to talk to us at all.
EdiCitNet also led to more cooperation within administration. Because ECS are an interdisciplinary field, the part of the administration from Berlin responsible for food, for urban gardening, and for urban development came to work closer together within EdiCitNet. But not only the city teams and administration should be mentioned here. Also, the work in the EdiCitNet consortium with you all was also an insightful experience. So many people from different countries with a wealth of experience and gave us just new and exciting perspectives for the local work here in Berlin. So thank you all for this. The story of EdiCitNet in Berlin is also about working in a new way while trying to negotiate all the different expectations. For us as the administration, but also for all the members of the city team, working in this co-creation approach was new. We all know participation as the method. In this approach, very different expectations of the process and the results had to be consequently negotiated between the city team, us, and our hub. Furthermore, due to Corona, maintaining the process got complicated and required a switch to digital working. With the great support of Boku, this worked well in Berlin and we got creative, as you can see here, but nevertheless we had a few transformation losses.
Yeah, for us, participation wasn't as new because we're a community garden. But I found it mainly interesting how this construction of city team, which was a construction between formal and informal, kind of worked for us. In the beginning, they had the task to kind of tell us what to do to create the ECSs. And the people were quite motivated and they were quite onto it. And then for the following years, they were asked to how to support what they decided on, what we're going to do. And there it was a bit unclear, because a person from the administration, how can they kind of support if they have no formal request to do something? So that was interesting and a learning for me that we should have given them, after the deciding, more concrete tasks, but we somehow didn't manage. And the whole process as well was quite, all these conferences and all this knowledge you gained, that was very interesting. I think we got... Not to her, to the city teams, to the members of the city team. We had a mixed city team of administration, civil organizations and stuff, and we weren't quite clear enough there.
Our EdiCitNet story here in Berlin was also about stepping out of our comfort zone and doing things we wouldn't have done and tried without EdiCitNet. The Senate Department for Urban Development, Building and Housing belongs to the state level of administration. In addition, EdiCitNet is connected to the Social Cohesion Funding Program, so both tasks of steering a master plan process on a very specific topic and accompanying the concrete implementation of the Living Lab was completely new for us and was very exciting.
Yeah, for us, stepping out of our comfort zone was mainly, you can see those products I've been talking about, and they're quite beautiful. Doing those, we never really went into production. We're a place of education. And we had some things like the edible landscaping that wouldn't have been possible without this project, and it's a big project for us. Or applying for the funding for the new building for the Environmental Education Center. these were quite challenging in the size of the project for us, and we couldn't have achieved the chance to do them without this project here.
The EdiCitNet story in Berlin is also about getting the confirmation that people and nature in cities just need ECS. Even when we are putting together the city team for the master plan back in 2019, we noticed that there's just an incredible amount of interest in this specific topic, both from people and from initiatives. In the master plan city team, there was also a firm belief that ECS can make a huge contribution to the more sustainable future for Berlin. In implementation, we are already noticing this in our social cohesion funding program. We are more and more supporting ECS, especially community garden projects prove to be very successful in terms of strengthening the surrounding neighborhoods.
Well, we knew that community garden is a good thing and people want it because we're doing that since a long time. But in the year of the project, for example, during the project there was Corona, and we had huge increase of traffic during Corona because all indoor activities were kind of blocked. So people were coming to us. And one confirmation for us as well was how to find open minds in organizations where we haven't had them before, like in administration, for example. It wasn't necessarily civil science. So that was interesting for us as well.
Don't worry, this is our last slide. In the end, the EdiCitNet story was also about knowing that EdiCitNet was a good start, but change just needs more time. As a result of EdiCitNet, Berlin has a master plan that gives a good overview over existing ECS and starting points for them. However, due to various reasons, we have a lack of concrete measures and implementation quality in our master plan. Thus, our city team is not fully satisfied with the result. But the city of Berlin sees the document as a good start and will try to follow it up across departments. However, one of the greatest successes of EdiCitNet is not the master plan document, but the context and cooperation established by the city team, the consortium, and the whole network. In the meantime, the city team has developed into a smaller group that would like to continue its work.
All right, for us, now the project is coming to an end. I must say, on one hand, like the value of the gained knowledge within this project is huge for us in terms of network, in terms of contacts, but in terms of just the knowledge and seeing how other organizations do things as well. We are facing now two big challenges without the project, which is this environmental education center and the edible landscaping. First, they're quite challenging, but on the other hand, it's been 5 years, it's been a lot of money in this project, and we work for some kind of ecological and social transformation of our society since years, and you need a lot more of these projects to be able to achieve them. For us, it's been a milestone and a great project, but there has to be done a lot more than that.
So the story here in Berlin started during EdiCitNet and will be continued. See you soon.
So I'm sorry, we are running out of time, so there's no possibility to ask now directly, but in the coffee break, in the lunch break, and tomorrow there will be a lot of opportunities to discuss with Robert and with Inken about the experiences, and of course also with the other city team members, that there are some here, so please contact them in the coffee break. I'm happy that we have also nice experiences here now from France, from Nice. And I'm happy to introduce to you Karine Moreau. She has a degree in business and company law from the faculty of Nice. And she has a lot of experience with urban greening and gardens. And she's currently, in the last elections, she became deputy mayor of Nice. So we are really happy, responsible for urban agriculture, vegetable gardens, neighborhood animation, etc. So we are really happy to have these insights. And she is accompanied by Mino, part of the EdiCitNet consortium, of course. And well, she is an expert on Euro-Mediterranean information systems, and managed a lot of projects on EU policies and innovation actions. So we are happy to have you here, and please take the stage for your experience.
Thank you, Ina. So as you may know, the city of Nice was not a formal partner of the EdiCitNet project. Semide is a partner, and we bring the city of Nice in the project for the last 2 years of the project, because we were developing case studies, in particular for the application of the indicators, and we were thinking that the experience in Nice was worth exploring it a little bit more. I will give the floor to Catherine Moreau. As it was said, she is the elected councillor in charge of urban agriculture in the city of Nice. She will make a short introduction in French, but we have the support of the slides in English, and then I will continue and give more details on it. Catherine.
Alors, bonjour à tous. Vous me pardonnerez de m'exprimer en français parce que je ne maîtrise pas suffisamment l'anglais, surtout sur des termes techniques. Donc voilà, j'aurai un traducteur. Merci. Voilà. Donc je suis très fière d'être ici et aussi je voudrais associer bien sûr le maire de notre ville, Christian Estrosi, puisqu'il a souhaité très tôt et dès 2013 avec l'adoption de l'agenda 21, et puis depuis 2018, avec le plan de reconquête de la nature et de la biodiversité, eh bien, il a voulu que la ville de Nice ait une politique volontariste autour des questions agricoles et alimentaires. La question de la comestibilité des villes est traitée notamment à travers les jardins potagers, et ma présence auprès de vous en est une vraie illustration, puisque depuis 2020, il y a officiellement une délégation à l'agriculture urbaine et au jardin potager que je porte avec conviction. Cette démarche fait de Nice un territoire où la santé humaine et les services rendus à la nature par le jardinage de proximité sont deux axes particulièrement suivis. Nous avons plusieurs engagements envers la population niçoise qui ont été rédigés de façon concertée avec les associations gestionnaires dans la charte des jardins potagers. Je voudrais juste associer Laetitia Laurent, qui m'accompagne aussi et qui est là, et qui a largement et qui est responsable aussi de ce service agriculture urbaine. Tout d'abord, du bon usage des terrains municipaux dans le respect de l'agroécologie, un bordage juridique à travers une convention qui vient répartir les responsabilités entre la ville de Nice et les associations gestionnaires, une transparence de la procédure d'attribution avec une publication d'1 mois sur le site internet de la ville et dans un journal quotidien, et ensuite une grille d'évaluation des projets déposés avec une orientation pour des projets solidaires et écologiques. Une ouverture obligatoire vers les établissements publics proches pour des actions hebdomadaires, la solidarité avec d'autres publics à travers le don institué dans la charte, notamment des dons vers des restaurants collectifs entre retraités et étudiants, vers des épiceries solidaires, vers d'autres associations comme le Secours populaire ou la Banque alimentaire. Et enfin, une participation à des événements locaux pour les Niçois, une inscription dans un calendrier national, voire mondial, avec des événements récurrents tels que les 48 heures de l'agriculture urbaine, la Coupe de France et bientôt la Coupe du monde du potager, etc. Aujourd'hui, notre ambition est double et indissociable d'une volonté d'aller aussi vers une autonomie alimentaire comme monsieur l'a rappelé. Ouvrir annuellement de nouveaux jardins potagers dans les quartiers, ce qui est un engagement fort dans un territoire où le foncier est très cher et peu disponible. Assurer un réel usage maraîcher avec une offre en formation pour soutenir la montée en compétences horticoles et maraîchères des associations gestionnaires de ces jardins. C'est ainsi que nous fédérons l'ensemble des acteurs autour de l'activité de jardinage amateur pour tisser des liens sociaux et de partage. Le volet scientifique est une corde de plus dans les actions conduites au sein des potagers niçois. Merci, madame. Je remercie le Semide pour notre beau partenariat qui nous amène aujourd'hui à Berlin pour échanger et construire de nouvelles perspectives de développement vers des villes toujours plus végétalisées et comestibles.
Merci, merci Catherine. So we will go ahead, and I will go quickly because I understood that we don't have that much time. So I will sum up the activities that have been carried out in the city of Nice. Some of them are already been presented in Barcelona meeting, so I will go fast for the first part. So today, as it was mentioned before, community gardens and vegetable gardens have been developed for the last 10 years, and 15 community gardens are existing. And most of the schools, 70% of the schools, have vegetable plots within the school or are able to access vegetable plots in the community garden. So this is part of the agreement with the associations. 9 community gardens have been involved in the case studies. They are presented with profiles on the EdiCitNet toolbox. The governance mechanisms that have been mentioned before for the municipality of Nice, so they go ahead with this voluntary policy that start with the identifications of potential lands where you can develop vegetable gardens, which is not so which is quite difficult because of the pressure on the land, and then we prepare the land and give access to water. Then there's an open call for projects where association can apply to manage this community gardens. Evaluation by a specific committee, deliberations to designate the laureate, and then there's a contract with the community garden, with the associations for the management of a community garden, and they need to sign this charter. And the exploitation is for 10 years. Okay, so there's a wide variety of type of community gardens, from 100 meters to 1,200 square meters. Each member for the community gardens who can exploit a specific plot need to pay a small fee, but financing is still a problem. As it was mentioned before by the colleagues from Amsterdam, they are depending on public funding. But the solidarity is at the heart of the gardens, with specific plots dedicated for schools or for socially deprived peoples that they can access it, or specific products that are given to charities. And they need to apply some ecological principles. The benefits, I mean, it's clearly, you can see, I will not read them, but the first one is the production of food for themselves. And this is a key point when we have been speaking with the members, I mean, the citizens who are using the plots. We apply the EdiCitNet toolbox. As you can see, the profiles are quite similar because they need to follow the charter. And the charter is not completely excluding, but it's the commercial activities are out of the box for this. Then for the last year, we start working on water issues because in France, and I think for most of South Europe, we were facing a big drought, so there was restriction in using water. So the awareness was higher, and they were more keen to start working with us on these questions. And we work also on the economic sustainability with business perspective. I will have no time, so I will not give details about it. But you need to keep in mind that it's an issue, and the idea for one of a community garden is how to become less dependent on public funding, so developing activities, products, and so on. On the water resources, most of them are using tap water because it's provided by the city, but they are interested by non-conventional water, in particular rainwater harvesting. We saw that there's a potential for collecting rainwater on these small gardens between 6 square meter and 40 square meters, existing tanks, concrete tanks, or plastic tanks that are given to them. And there's also an activity which is good from the municipality. The municipality is also organizing a kind of intersectoral discussions with green, for example, for composting, so we can get all the composting, but also with the service in charge of public works. And when there's public works in the city for building new buildings or roads, when they're making excavations, sometimes they've got a lot of water coming from the groundwater. So they take this water, which is quite good, and then they distribute it with trucks, which is not that ecological good, but they distributed this water to the community gardens. Most of them are interested by using the non-conventional water resources, but they've got problem of space, again, to store the water. Cost, because there's a cost for the equipment, the pumping, they need sensors also, and they need knowledge. We look also at the irrigation practices. So most of them are using hoses and tanks, but a few of them are starting to use precision irrigations. We say 5, but in fact, there's only 2 who are extensively using them. And they have also some good practices for agriculture, so like mulching or soil improvement with local compost and manure, thanks to the livestock that they may have. So they improve the soils, they need less water. And this is the results of the evaluation we've done. So we were using, again, the toolbox for making some of these evaluations, and we look at how good it is thanks to the metering of the water. And as you can see, when they use drip irrigation, like here and here, the consumption of water is much less. So it's much less, but you can see also that some gardens who are not using precision irrigations, they are not using that much water because of the good agricultural practices. So you need both. If you combine both, then you can reduce a lot the water consumptions. And my last slide, it's the action foreseen for the future. So it's continuation of supporting the existing community gardens. I mean, the municipality is doing that with local farmers, Chamber of Agriculture for the practices, but they need training on water efficiency, again, good farming practices. They are interested in these alternative water resources, so there's some rooms for this rainwater collection and storing, but also most probably reclaimed water. So today it's not used at all, but for non-edible parts, that could be a solution because the city is starting to develop this treated wastewater reuse. There's expression of interest for experience sharing between the gardens. And the last point is about this guidance about economic development. As I mentioned, it's a key point for some of them, and the municipality of Nice is starting also to open this space in the charter. Developing more and more edible gardens, starting with this cooperation with the private sector, with social housing. It was mentioned by your presentation before, because here you can have more space, and for the rainwater collection, for example, you have also much more potential. And last point that was out of the case studies is the development of professional urban agriculture, particularly on the development of roof agriculture for food sustainability, the SID for the municipality, so the municipality is supporting farmers to do that. Thank you.
Great. Catherine, Eric, yeah, we'll have time for discussions in the lunch break, yes. Okay. So I will handle over directly to our next presenters, which come from the north, from Oslo. Stephanie, it's now your turn. Stephanie Degenhardt works for the Agency of Urban Environment in the city of Oslo, and she's responsible for many projects that are dealing with the topic of urban agriculture, and we are happy to have the success stories from Oslo here on the stage.
Thank you, Ina. Hello, everyone. Nice to see lots of familiar faces, a lot of new faces as well. So I'm going to start with a little introduction to Oslo for those who aren't so familiar. As Ina already presented me, Stephanie Degenhardt. I'm working for the Urban Agency for the Agency for Urban Environment as in the city of Oslo. And Oslo, against common belief, is the capital of Norway, not Sweden. We are a relatively small city compared to European standards. We're about 700,000 inhabitants, but we are the biggest in Norway, and we are the fastest, or one of the fastest growing cities in Europe. I'm saying this is a bit important to remember when we think about establishing an urban living lab about urban agriculture, because the city is a bit special how it's situated. It has a fjord on the one side and it has a protected forest on the other side. So it's a growing city, but it can't really expand, so it has to grow within the city, which naturally creates a lot of pressure on already existing areas, particularly green areas. Another fact to Oslo is that it is historically divided into a richer west and a poorer east, which is still visible today. For example, there are less big green spaces in the east part of the city, and that is where our living lab is situated. To countermeasure this development, Oslo has several urban renewal programs, and the one where our living lab is situated is also undergoing an urban renewal program with a focus on developing neighborhood. So here you can see our living lab. It is the Linderud Community Garden, Community and Neighborhood Garden. The living lab is situated on an old farm, the Linderud Manor, which back in the days when Oslo just started was quite an agricultural city or place, because it has one of the best conditions, climate and soil and freshwater access in Norway. So everything that's built up now used to be part of a farm, and Linderud Manor was one of the biggest landowner, biggest farm in that area. Nowadays it's all built up. We have lots of apartment blocks or high-rise buildings. We have a big motorway, new apartments, but also good resources like a shopping center and a primary school, a high school, and kindergartens as our direct neighbor. The farm itself was very closed up until, I don't know, for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, somewhere then, because it was privately owned. And a lot of people who live in that area, for example, 40 years already, have never been to that farm. They knew it existed, but it was just big fences around. When the museum took over and they started to work together with the local city district, the urban renewal program, they have the goal to open up that farm and basically let the neighborhood, the community in and use that green space. So we have, in that farm, we have the goal, or the Living Lab has the goal, to use urban agriculture as a resource for the community by building community through urban agriculture, improve participation. We want people to come in, use the space, and thereby increasing the social cohesion. We also want to empower community members through knowledge, and we want to stimulate and facilitate for entrepreneurship. Yes, I'm saying, I probably forgot to mention that the area where the Living Lab is situated is undergoing, or it has quite significant social, economical challenges, like high school dropouts or high unemployment rate and the typical things. So just in the back of your mind. I'm going to start with the failures, because people tend to remember the first and last thing I say, so the failures are tucked in the middle. The first thing that probably everyone knows who works with project development is when you plan a project, you put all the dates as you think they're very realistically and throw it all out, double that time and use that. That's something we experienced a lot. So I think our timeline about all the things that we wanted to do didn't quite match the timeline of the people on the ground and the city team and what they wanted to do. So it's a constant give and take about what we need to do and what comes first. When we started that project, we started with nothing. We kind of had a project idea, but we didn't know where it was situated. We didn't have any participants. We didn't. I think we didn't even have any soil. So we started really from scratch. Another thing, another failure or challenge rather, what I want to mention is that EdiCitNet, everyone who's familiar with the project knows it's a very big project. It's very complicated and very implicit. Like there's a lot of different small things to it. This is very difficult to communicate to the people who are in the Living Lab. So we struggled our fair share with translating these goals, the goals I just showed. They have gone through many rounds adapting and making them kind of digestible, understandable for people, for us as well. And so this complicated language kind of led to erode sparse interest amongst the local community to join the international meetings or the exchange meetings. It's not so much the interest, actually, it's more that people didn't feel ready. They started with a project, they were interested in where do we get our soil from, where does the water come from, what's the code to the padlock over there. They wanted to do things, they were ready to put their hands in the soil. They weren't really ready to go on the conferences or join international meetings or even learn about other projects because they were very much focused on, we need to get started, we have an idea, we want to do something. So that's something we struggled mostly with. 5 minutes, all right. Let me tell you that, yeah. So in terms of communication, I think I also had a personal low when after, I think it was 3 years of EdiCitNet, constant city team meetings, evaluation meetings, opening meetings, like we had so many rounds and discussions and everything. One participant came to me and said, I don't think I've ever heard of EdiCitNet, and maybe I also never met you. And I was like, yeah, I was destroyed when I went home that day. I was, what have we done in the last 3 days? So it's just shows you how much it takes to communicate and what people in the end take home with them. Also, another thing is we have a wide variety of stakeholders, which come with a wide variety of interests. So we're also business-oriented in our Living Lab, and those who just have started up a business maybe quit their day job or went down on their day job to 50%. Those aren't necessarily the same people who want to sit down and have a coffee for 3 hours to just talk about everything. So, you know, there's a bit of a conflict of interest. Let's go over to what we achieved. Here you see our field. 2019 is when we took the project over. 2020 is actually when we started with training the soil, figuring out if we have soil or if not. Is still a bit of a mystery, but we had to get a lot of soil in. And within actually 2020, 2021, so 2 years, is how the whole Living Lab was established. It's amazing to see. So the physical changes is probably one of the biggest things. So I see I'm a bit far here. And yes, nowadays Linderud Community Garden is one of the it's on top projects in Oslo in terms of urban agriculture. It's very visited by a lot of people who come to learn about urban agriculture, both nationally, but also internationally. So now a lot of people who want to go on study visits always go to the Linderud farm without us pushing it. They just heard about it somewhere or learned it, and it's so it has become quite an educational hotspot. Here you see an overview of our living of our edible city solutions. I think we have currently 13 edible city solutions in our living lab, and another 4 who were with us but have either moved away, stopped their business, or for some reason aren't there anymore. But generally speaking, it's we have a big variety. We have a cooperative, we have educational ECSs, we have social entrepreneurs and green entrepreneurs, and all the ones, lack of time, so I'm not going through them, but all the ones in red are those who would not exist if it wasn't for the Linderud Living Lab, because those are all the ones who started up through that project. We have also been very successful in creating jobs, and in terms of participation in community. We had a summer job program since 2020, where we employ local youth to help out in the garden, help either the local, the social entrepreneurs, or have other jobs like basically making the garden happen. There was always something to do. This year we have 26 youth. We had about 55 in 2020, and it has become a really good project. We work together with the city, with the local city district, who fund a lot of these summer jobs. They're also very popular. And we have transitioned really well from a top-down initiated project, because it came from the city together with the museum in Akershus, who is running the museum, the Linderud farm. They have, and now with people who actually there every day have kind of taken over the ownership. They own it, they run that. Okay, I have to go really fast now. We also figured it was really good to provide land, provide education, and providing a support network for the people who start up the business. So a lot of them who have started kind of made it through the first and the second year. Some of them have expanded, some of them have joined another ECS they started together with, and now they are one together, or they have projects together. So there's a lot of mixture happening, but everyone is thriving. So this was very successful. And last one, I really want to show that. The funding we put in. We know that when you put in initial funding, it often creates more opportunities for more funding. So you need to get started, and that's very important for EU projects or for municipality-funded projects, to take that first step and invest in these projects to make them happen. So the funding that went directly into starting the garden from EdiCitNet was about 100,000 euros. And right now, I think we have created funding of over 544,000 euros, so it has five-folded in those years. With the local city district as one of the biggest money giver. But also other organizations, wherever we could look for. Yeah, okay, I'll leave you with that. I'll leave you with some nice pictures, because I couldn't fit them into the presentation, and I'm also out of time, I guess. But thank you very much.
Again, we are late, but in the lunch break, I'm sure that Stephanie will answer every question you have. I would hand over to Noel. Noel Arozarena Daza is Senior Researcher and Director of the Development Area at the INIFAT, the Institute for Fundamental Research in Tropical Agriculture in Havana, Cuba. And he will give us some insights from the activities in Havana. And then this is the last talk before the lunch, and then we go on. I'm sure we will understand your English, no problem.
Okay. Thanks to everybody. I am going to...
a bit more detail.
Sound. que si no me apagan al medio, no veo. ¿Lo puedo sacar ahí? No. Aquí. Aquí va. I am going to tell you about the condition we have to improve the project in Cuba, because as you know, we have another kind of life for do that things. The principal thing is that we have a frame, a legal frame, that you can see about some laws that conduce the agriculture in the country. That is very important for us, because without a special regulation, we can't do anything. We cannot do anything in order to produce food. Principal laws are. No, quiero tener el micrófono en la mano para poder virarme de la. ¿Quieres el micrófono? Principal laws are related with the soils, with the genetic resource for food and agriculture, for the conservation of the environment, and especially about food sovereignty and food security. Being that a complete regulation frame, we try to improve the project. We consider as our opportunity the consolidated system of urban agriculture we have in the country, the programs for development that the governance has made for until 2030, and the compromise of the governance with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we can focus to the demand to satisfy with the Havana EdiCitNet project. The first, we have to develop our urban agriculture model. We need to do it. We have a very insufficient local food production, and especially a very little supply of fish to the people. So our principal objective is to promote the fish farming as a production technology that increase the contribution of urban agriculture to the food and self-supplies doing it as an example in the Boyeros municipality of Havana. We pretend to take or to develop mixed facilities, because we are going to put together the fish production in the urban agriculture places. We have to, in order to optimize the use of the water as a natural resource, we have to take care about that. We try to diversify production. That is one of the bases of the sustainability, and we try to enforce the production as a circular economy, increase the efficiency of the production, and use innovation in the chain of values of the food production. So we have identified as a principal axis of the components of our work the innovation, the agricultural extension, training and improvement, because people have to know, have to learn to produce fish, the technical productive components of the urban agriculture, national food component, the environment, the use of the environment, and the organizational component of the practice we are trying to put in march. And the principal risk we have, or the principal problem we can find in our way are political, social, economic, environmental, organizational, and the others. We have to front, we have to fight against that kind of risk. So we have combined. We are working with agricultures, research centers as my one, local governance, ministers of agriculture, ministers of food industry, and the agricultural business group. And we are focusing the production to fish, two species, tilapia and cachama, vegetables, cabbage, lettuce, pumpkin, melon, spinach, etc., and fruit trees and guava, mango, and animal feed, because we are pretending to use worm as a food for the fish. That is the chain of value. That is the principal thing we are trying to do. Right, that's all. So you can ask everything you want to know.
Noel, I guess we have some minutes left for questions. 3 minutes, so please. No, take.
What happened? Can I ask what happened? Did it go well? Yeah. So what happened? Does it still exist, the fish farm? Did it succeed?
So, we have some experience at the country with the fish production, but for the first time we are to combine fish production as a part of the urban agriculture in places or sites. So we are going to use that is the combination of two technologies. We are going to do, or we are going to use the same water to produce fish, and that water that becomes very fertilized, used for the production of vegetables. So we are going to use twice the same water. That is the principal innovation, the principal technological innovation we are trying to put in march in the place. But what happened? People used to be a fisher or agriculture. So you have to demonstrate, to show them that they can do the both things in the same place with the good results. That is the principal challenge for a EdiCitNet project.
Did you install already one? ¿Se ha instalado alguno?
There are some experience we are attending as a assessor. As a prototype, but we have to do it in more quantity in order to develop a new model for the urban agriculture system. That is the reason, because we are starting with a municipality. So we must, in Cuba, people say, you see and then you believe. And
So you want to integrate it into the urban gardens which are already existing, so a model which can be upscaled to all the organoporticos?
yes, we are going to start doing it in the organoponics. Why? Because organoponics is the most standard technology inside the urban agriculture in the country. So if you do it in the organoponics, you are doing it in the whole urban agriculture. And because organoponics is very near the people, so the principal goal is to put the fish near. We are an island, but we don't eat to food as everybody can think. So we want to put the fish production near to the people inside the cities.
Any Okay, so if there's no other question, then we could continue discussing this face-to-face in the lunch break.